And I'm live. I don't know why I did that, but I did. Welcome back to the video. I'm recording this a day in advance because I'll be at my friend's house. But anyways, welcome back to another video. Today we'll be starting out Judges. It's day 54, and so I'll be reading Judges chapters 1 through 4. And so, let's get started. Show you the page. Just gonna look real quick, see how long these chapters are. So, could be a shorter video. Judah's leadership against the Canaanites. After the death of Joshua, the Israelites inquired of the Lord, "Who will be the first to fight for us against the Canaanites?" The Lord answered, "Judah is to go. I've handed the land over to him." Judah said to his brother Simon, "Come with me to allot my territory. Let's go fight against the Canaanites. I'll also go with you if you're allotted territory." Simon went on with him. When Judah attacked, the Lord handed over the Canaanites and Perizzites to them. They struck down 10,000 men in Bezek. They found Adoni-Bezek, and Bezek fought against him and struck down the Canaanites and Perizzites. When Adoni-Bezek fled, they pursued him, caught him, and cut off his thumbs and big toes. Adoni-Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and big toes cut off used to be pickup scraps. Under my table, God has repaid me for what I've done. They brought him to Jerusalem, and he died there. The men of Judah fought against Jerusalem, captured it, put it to the sword, and set fire on it. Afterward, the men of Judah marched down to fight against the Canaanites who were living in the hill country, also the Negev and the Judean foothills. Judah also marched against the Canaanites who were living in Hebron, formerly named Kiriath Arba. They struck down Sheshai, Arman, and Talmai. From there, they marched against the residents of Debir, merely named Kiriath-Sepher. Caleb said, "Whoever attacks and captures Kiriath-Sepher, I'll give my daughter Shah to him as a wife." So Othniel, son of Kenaz, Caleb's youngest brother, captured it, and Caleb went to his daughter Shah to him as his wife. When she arrived, she persuaded Othniel to ask her father for a field. As she got off her donkey, Caleb asked her, what do you want?" She answered him, "Give me a blessing. Since you have given me the land in Negev, give me springs also." So Caleb gave her both the upper and lower springs. The descendants of the Canaanite Moses' father-in-law had gone up with the men from Judah from the city of the palms to the wilderness of Judah, which is the Negev of Arad. They went to live among the people. Judah went with his brother Simon, struck the Canaanites who were living in Sebeth, and completely destroyed the town. So they named the town Hormah. Judah captured Gaza and its territory, Ashkelon and its territory, and Ekron and its territory. The Lord was with Judah and enabled them to take out possession of the hill country that they could. Oh, something just went on. Let's see if that's going to fix it. Well, it looks like it's frozen in live stream, so I'm really hoping it smooths out. I'm trying to see what's going on. Come on, please work. There it goes. So I think, oh yeah, there it goes. It's smoothing out now. Okay. I'm hoping nothing cuts out. They went to live among the people. Judah went with his brother Simon, struck the Canaanites who were living in its path, which destroyed the towns, and in Hormah, Judah captured Gaza and its territory, Ashkelon and its territory, and Ekron and its territory. The Lord was with Judah and enabled them to take possession of the hill country, but they could not drive out the people who were living in the valley, because those people had iron chariots. Judah gave Hebron to Caleb, just as Moses promised, and Caleb drove out the three sons of Anak who lived there. Benjamin's failure. At the same time, the Benjamites did not drive out the Jebusites who were living in Jerusalem. Jebusites had lived among the Benjamites in Jerusalem to this day. Success of the house of Joseph. The house of Joseph attacked Bethel, and the Lord was with them. They sent spies to Bethel, a town formerly named Luz. The spies saw a man coming out of the town and said to him, "Please show us how to get into town, and we will show you kindness." When he showed them the way into town, they put the town to the sword, but released a man and his entire family. Then the man went to the land of Hittites, built a town, and named it Luz. That is its name still today. Failure of the other tribes. At that time, Manasseh failed to take possession of Beth, Shan, and Hanach and their surrounding villages, the residents of Dor, Ibiam, and Medigo, and their surrounding villages. The Canaanites were determined to stay in this land. Israel became stronger than the Canaanites served as forced labor and never drove them out completely. By that time, Ephraim failed to drive out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer, so the Canaanites had lived among them in Gezer. Zebulun failed to drive out the residents of Kithon or the residents of Nahalol, so the Canaanites lived among them and served as forced labor. Asher failed to drive out the residents of Akko or Sidons or Aholab, Jizib, Elbin, Apik, or Rehob. The Asherites lived among the Canaanites who were living in the land because they failed to drive them out. Naphtali did not drive out the residents of Beth Shemesh or the residents of Beth Anath. They lived among the Canaanites who were living in the land. The residents of Beth Shemesh and Beth Anath served as forced labor. The Amorites forced the Danites to the hill country and did not allow them to go down into the valley. The Amorites were determined to stay in. Alright, here is Ahijon and Shaalhalan. When the house of Joseph got the upper hand, the Amorites were made to serve as forced labor. The territory of the Amorites extended from the Scorpion descent, that is from Selah upward. Pattern of sin and judgment. Something popped up again. It's not really popped up. It's looking like it's cutting out again. I can't really tell. Let's see. It looks smooth on the camera, but it's saying it's cutting out. I have no clue. I'm just going to keep on reading, and if it doesn't work, I'm just going to post on my phone. Pattern of sin and judgment. The angel of the Lord went out to Gilgal to Bochum and said, I brought you out of Egypt and led you into the land I promised to your fathers. I also said, I never break my covenant with you. You are not to make a covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You are to tear down their altars, but you have not obeyed me. What is this you have done? Still saying stuff's disconnecting. I don't know. You are to make this covenant with the inhabitants of the land. You are to tear down their altars, but you have not obeyed me. What is this you have done? Therefore I'll now say, I will not drive out these people before you. There will be thorns in your sides, and one of their gods will be a trap for you. When the angel of the Lord spoke in these words to all the Israelites, the people wept loudly. So he named the place Bochim and offered sacrifices to the Lord. Joshua's death. Previously, when Joshua sent his people away, the Israelites had gone to take possession of the land, each of his own inheritance. People worshipped the Lord throughout Joshua's lifetime and during the lifetimes of the elders who outlived Joshua. They had seen all of the Lord's great works and he had done for Israel. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at age 110. They buried him in the territory of the inheritance of the Timnath Heres in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gash. The whole generation was also gathered to their ancestors. After them another generation rose who did not know the Lord or the works he had done for Israel. The Israelites did what was evil in the Lord's sight. They worshipped Baals and abandoned the Lord, the God their fathers who had brought them out of Egypt. They followed other gods and the surrounding peoples bowed down to them. They angered the Lord, for they abandoned him and worshipped Baal and the Ashtoreth. The Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he handed them over to marauders who raided them. He sold them to the enemies around them. They could no longer resist their enemies. Whenever the Israelites went out, the Lord was against them and brought disaster on them, just as you promised and sworn to them. So they suffered greatly. The Lord raised up judges who saved them from the power of their marauders, but they did not listen to the judges. Instead, they prostituted themselves with other gods, bowing down to them. They quickly turned away the way of their fathers who had walked in obedience to the Lord's commands. They did not do as their fathers did. Whenever the Lord raised up a judge for the Israelites, the Lord was with them and saved the people from the power of their enemies while the judges were still alive. The Lord is moved to pity whenever they groan because of those who were oppressing and afflicting them. Whenever the judge died, the Israelites would act even more corruptly than their fathers, following other gods to serve them and bow and worship to them. They did not turn from their evil practices or their obstinate ways. The Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he declared, "Because this nation has violated my covenant that I made with their fathers and disobeyed me, I will no longer drive them out before them any nation Joshua left and died. I did this to test Israel and see whether they keep the Lord's way by walking in it, as their fathers had. The Lord left these nations and did not drive them out immediately, did not hand them over to Joshua." Chapter 3, halfway through, the Lord tests Israel. These are the nations the Lord left in order to test all those in Israel who experienced none of the wars in Canaan. This was to teach the future generations of Israel how to fight in battle, especially those who had not fought before. These nations included the 5 rulers of the Philistines and all the Canaanites, the Sidonites, and the Hivites, who lived in the Beni's mountains from Mount Baal-Hermon as far as the entrance to Hamath. The Lord left them to test Israel to determine if they would keep the Lord's commands, but he had given their fathers through Moses. But they settled among the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. The Israelites took their daughters as wives for themselves, gave their own daughters to their sons, and worshipped their gods. Othniel, the first judge. The Israelites did what was evil in the Lord's sight. They forgot the Lord their God and worshipped the Baals and Asherahs. The Lord's anger burned against Israel and sold them to King Geshan Rishathaim of Arnam Naharaim. And the Israelites served him 8 years. The Israelites cried out to the Lord. So the Lord raised up Othniel son of Kenaz, Caleb's youngest brother, as a deliverer to save the Israelites. The Spirit of the Lord came on him, and he judged Israel. Othniel went out into battle, and the Lord handed over King Geshan of Aram to him, so that Othniel overpowered him. Then the land had peace for 40 years, and Othniel, son of Kenaz, died. Ehud. The Israelites did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He gave King Elgon of Moab power over Israel, because they had done what was evil in the Lord's sight. After Elgon convinced the Ammonites and Amalekites to join forces with him, he attacked and defeated Israel and took possession of the city of palms. The Israelites served King Elgon of Moab 18 years. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and he raised up Ehud son of Zerah, a left-handed Benjaminite. Why does it it specifically says left-handed as a deliverer for them? The Israelites sent him with the tribute for King Elgon of Moab. He had made himself a double-edged sword 18 inches long. He strapped it to his right thigh under his clothes and brought the tribute to King Elgon of Moab, who was an extremely fat man. When he had finished presenting the tribute, he dismissed the people who had carried it. As the carved images near Gilgal, he returned and said, "King Elgon, I have a secret message for you." The king said, "Silence," and all his attendants left him. Then Ehud approached him while he was sitting alone in his upstairs room where it was cool. Ehud said, "I am a messenger from God for you." And the king stood up from his throne. Ehud reached with his left hand, took the sword from his right thigh, and plunged it into Elgon's belly. Even the handle went in after the blood, and Elgon's fat closed over it, so that Ehud did not withdraw the sword from his belly, and waste came out. Ehud escaped by the way of the porch, closing and locking the doors in the upstairs room behind him. Ehud was gone when Elgon's servants came in. They looked and found the doors of the upstairs room locked, and thought he was relieving himself in the cool room. The servants waited until they became embarrassed and saw that he had still not opened the doors of the upstairs room. So they took the key and opened the doors. There was their lord lying dead on the floor. Ehud escaped while the servants waited. He passed the Jordan near the carved images and reached Seirah. After he arrived, he sounded the ram's horn throughout the hill country of Ephraim. The Israelites came down with him from the hill country and became their leader. He had told them, "Follow me, because the Lord has handed over your enemies, the Moabites, to you." So they followed him, captured the fords of the Jordan leading to Moab, and did not allow anyone to cross over. That time they struck down about 10,000 Moabites, and all stout and able-bodied men. None of them escaped. Moab became subject to Israel that day, and the land had peace for 80 years. Shimgur. After Ehud, Shimgur, son of Anath, became judge. He also delivered to Israel, striking down 600 Philistines with a cattle prod. Chapter 4, the final chapter. Deborah and Barak. The Israelites again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud had died. So the Lord sold them to King Jabin of Canaan. He reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Zerah, who lived in Harosheth in the Nations. And the Israelites cried out to the Lord because Jabin had 900 iron chariots and harshly oppressed them 20 years. Deborah, a prophetess and the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time. She would sit under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Israelites went up to her to settle disputes. She summoned Barak, son of Abinoam from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, Hasn't the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you to go deploy troops to Mount Tabor? Naphtali's and Zebulunites, Elur, Sisera, commander of Jabin's army, his chariots, and his infantry at the Wadi Kishon to fight against you. Now I'll hand him over to you. Barak said to her, If you will go with me, I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go. I will gladly go with you, she said, but you will receive no honor on the road you are about to take, because the Lord will send Sisera to a woman. So Deborah got up and went with Barak to Kadesh. Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh. 10,000 men followed him, and Deborah also went with him. Now Heber the Kenite had moved away from the Kenites, sons of Hobab, Moses' father-in-law, and pitched his tent beside the oak tree of Zaanannim, which was near Kadesh. It was reported to Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up Mount Tabor. Sisera summoned all his 900 chariots, and all his troops were with him from Harosheth of the nations to the Wadi Kishon. Then Deborah said to Barak, Go, this is your day. The Lord has handed Sisera over to you. Hasn't the Lord gone before you? So Barak came down the mountain Tabor with 10,000 men following him. The Lord threw Sisera, all his charioteers, and his army into panic before the Barak's assault. Sisera left his chariot and fled on foot. Barak pursued the chariots and the army as far as Harosheth of the nations, and the whole army of Sisera fell by the sword. Not a single man was left. Meanwhile, Sisera had fled on foot to the tent of Jael, his wife of Heber the Kenite, because there was peace between King Jabin of Hazor and the family of Heber the Kenite. Jael went out to greet Sisera and said to him, Come in, my lord, come in with me. Don't be afraid. She went into her tent and she covered him with a blanket. He said to her, Please give me a little water to drink, for I'm thirsty. She opened a container of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him again. Then he said to her, Stand at the entrance of the tent. If a man comes and asks you, Is your man sleeping here? Say no. While he was sleeping from exhaustion, Heber's wife Jael took a tent peg, grabbed a hammer, and went silently to Sisera. She hammered the peg in his temple and drove it into the ground, and he died. When Barak arrived in pursuit of Sisera, Jael went out to greet him and said to him, Come and I'll show you the man you are looking for. So he went in with her, and there was Sisera lying dead of a tent peg through his temple. That day God subdued the king of Jabin at Jenan before the Israelites. The power of the Israelites continued to increase against King Jabin of Canaan until they destroyed him. That is all the reading for today. Okay, so it starts out in chapter 1. I can flip to it. It was talking about Judah's leadership against the Canaanites, and then how Benjamin's failure and within the success of the house of Joseph, and the failure of all the other tribes, and then pattern of sin and judgment over and over again. And so after Joshua died, the Lord began to test Israel, and so Othniel became the first judge. Then Ehud And that's a very interesting one because he killed the king that was oppressing Israel, and like took an 18-inch blade and stabbed it into him, and the entire handle went in his stomach because he was so big, and then his fat rolled over it, so you couldn't even tell. Like, and then waste came out. That's just kind of a weird story. I remember from when I first read it, and then talks about Shamgar, and then Deborah and Barak, and how she drove the peg through the guy's temple. That's pretty, like, very graphic and gory, I guess. But that is all for today. And I hope you had a good day so far. Have a great rest of your day. Remember, God loves you. Goodbye. Wait, click the end. Oh no, I don't want to be another one of those days where it doesn't actually end. I'm just gonna spam this and see what happens. Maybe not yet. Come on. Yeah, you can do it. As your stream will stop immediately and you'll no longer be live. But it's not stopping immediately. I mean, you hear that, right? Very like that repeated sound. It's not working.